having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Bubba Wallace here from 2311 Racing. Funny thing about being fast, you end up waiting a lot. First to show up, first in line, then just waiting. Me, I rev up Chumba Casino. With over 200 social casino games, no slow lanes here. Why sit around when you can spin? I'm already racing. Your turn. Play for free at ChumbaCasino.com. Let's Chumba.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Okay, so welcome to the deep dive, everyone. We are diving into a topic that I know a ton of you have been wanting us to cover, and that is the TMZ documentary trilogy on the downfall of Diddy.
Yeah, it's been everywhere. A lot of talk about this one.
Exactly, and that's kind of why we're here. You know, we want to help you cut through all the noise, all the different opinions, all the different takes, and really like boil it down to like what is actually going on here. So we're going to try and break it down into the three parts that TMZ put out. The first one is just called The Downfall of Diddy. The second one, The Downfall of Diddy, The Indictment, and then finally, The Downfall of Diddy inside the FREAKOFFS.
Yeah, so those are the three. Pretty descriptive titles.
Very much so. Yeah, so we want to just look at like what are the main allegations, like what are people saying, you know, and then how have people been reacting to these films as well. What's interesting to me is that they are all clocking in at around an hour long each. So it's not just a little quick TMZ hit piece. They're actually trying to be, you know, sort of serious documentaries.
Right. I mean, I think that's what makes this so intriguing. They are trying to create a cohesive narrative here.
Yeah.
Over 3 hours of content. And it's centered around, like you said, a very public, very ongoing legal situation.
Right.
It's not just summarizing headlines. They're trying to go deeper. And I think that's what we're going to try and unpack as well. Yeah.
And I think, you know, a great place to start is with that first part, right? The downfall of Diddy, just setting the stage. They kind of, in this first part, are saying that they're going to provide this broad look at, you know, all the controversies that have surrounded Diddy over the years. What did you think of that as an opening? Did it work for you?
Well, I mean, the thing that immediately caught my eye was that they were claiming to have all this access to his former inner circle.
Yeah.
Like partners and colleagues, you know, people that were actually there, supposedly, for a lot of this journey.
Right.
And I mean, whenever you get that in a documentary, I think it's always fascinating. It's like, you know, you're getting those perspectives that maybe haven't been publicly shared before.
Yeah, for sure.
And in this case, right, you're talking about his rise to fame and then all these controversies that followed. So hearing it from the people that were supposedly, you know, right there with him, that could be really compelling stuff.
Yeah. And he's obviously, you know, a huge name in the music industry and has been for decades. And it sounds like the film really tries to connect, you know, his success, the success story, with, you know, all the things that have, you know, happened later in his career, all the legal challenges, the accusations. It's like they're trying to draw a very direct line.
Yeah, it's all about context, right? Trying to paint that full picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's crucial for this kind of documentary because you have to understand, you know, the whole story, you know, his career, his personal life to really grasp like why these legal troubles are so significant.
Right. And then it all leads up to that second part, the downfall of Diddy, the indictment. So, you know, obviously the focus shifts right to the federal indictment.
Yeah.
And they do spend a good amount of time in this one, actually going into the details of it. It's about an hour and 1 minute long.
Yeah.
Which for, you know, a TMZ production is actually a lot of time. But, you know, I think a lot of people hear the term federal indictment and they maybe don't really know what that means. What is that actually saying about, you know, Diddy's legal situation?
Yeah. So a federal indictment is basically, it's like a formal accusation.
Okay.
That's brought by a grand jury.
Okay.
And basically they're saying there's enough evidence to believe that he committed these crimes. That's what they're alleging.
Got it.
It's not a conviction.
Right.
That's really important. But it's a huge step in the legal process.
Oh, yeah.
And it basically lays out, you know, all the things that the government's going to try to prove in court.
So this is like the, you know, opening salvo.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, okay, here are the things that we're saying you did.
Right. This is what we're coming at you with. And I think what's interesting is that they don't just like show legal documents, you know?
Yeah.
They bring in legal experts, they bring in journalists.
Right.
And they're trying to help the audience like actually understand the implications of all this stuff.
Yeah.
What does this mean for him? What kind of evidence might we see? You know, all that stuff.
And also the fact that they say that they have people who are directly involved in the case. So then that's another interesting wrinkle there that, you know, maybe we're going to hear from people who have a direct connection to the, you know, legal proceedings.
Yeah, absolutely. And those firsthand accounts can be really powerful.
Yeah.
But you also have to remember that those people might have their own biases.
Oh, for sure.
You know, so we have to take that into account.
Right.
But it does add another layer of complexity to the story.
And then things take kind of a wild turn in the third part. Inside the FREAKOFFS.
Yeah, that title definitely grabs your attention.
Yeah, a little bit, you know. So it sounds like this one is really focused on these parties that he allegedly threw called FREAKOFFS. Now, have you heard much about these before?
I mean, I've heard the term thrown around, but honestly, the details have been pretty scarce.
Yeah, and that seems to be what this documentary is trying to get into, like what actually went on at these things.
Yeah, it seems like they're going for like firsthand accounts from people who claim to have been there.
Yeah.
Former associates, you know, that kind of thing.
And they're saying they have legal analysts in this one, too. So it sounds like they're trying to connect these parties to, you know, the bigger picture, the legal stuff we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, I mean, they're probably looking at, like, do these parties constitute illegal activity?
Right.
Or do they, you know, show a pattern of behavior that's relevant to the other allegations?
Right. It's like trying to fit this piece into the puzzle of the, you know, supposed downfall.
Exactly. And I think that's going to be the most controversial part of the whole series.
For sure. So, you know, we've kind of laid out what each part is about, but it's also important to look at, you know, how have people been reacting to this? Because we know there have been some pretty strong opinions out there. What have you noticed so far?
Oh, yeah. There's definitely been a mixed bag of reactions.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty typical for a documentary like this, especially when it's about someone as well known as Diddy.
Yeah.
People come in with their own, you know, preconceived notions and baggage.
Right.
But it's been interesting to see the different ways people are interpreting the same information.
Yeah. On the one hand, we've seen people really praising the documentaries, you know, saying that it's this really in-depth look at these serious accusations. There's this one Reddit comment that's kind of gone viral. The person wrote, "The fall of Diddy was really good, but very disturbing. It really showed how sick he is. He's definitely a predator in so many ways. I hope he never sees the light of day."
Yeah.
So, you know, they were pretty convinced by what they saw.
Right. And that reaction, I think, speaks to how powerful storytelling can be, even in a documentary.
Oh, yeah.
Like the way they presented the information really resonated with this person, and
Yeah.
it reinforced their negative views of Diddy.
Yeah. And, you know, it definitely made them feel strongly. You know?
Exactly. And I think that's something we have to be mindful of when we watch documentaries, you know,
Yeah.
about how is the information being presented and how is that influencing our emotional response.
Right. But then on the other hand, you have people who are criticizing the documentaries, you know, saying that they basically rehashed a lot of old news and didn't really reveal anything new. There was an IMDb review that said, "This was clearly made in a rush and is filled with junk news from TMZ's prior reportings. You won't learn anything new, and all the stories are ones you've already heard about."
Yeah.
So they were definitely not impressed.
And that's a fair critique, I think,
Yeah.
especially for people who have been following the story closely.
Yeah.
If it's just regurgitating old stuff, then where's the value?
Right.
You know, what am I getting out of this?
Exactly. And it kind of highlights that challenge of making a documentary about something that's still unfolding. Like, you want to be timely. You want to get it out there while it's still relevant, but you also want to make sure you have something new to say.
Absolutely. And I think that's a tension we're going to see more and more as documentaries become, you know, even more popular and even easier to produce.
For sure. So yeah, it's fascinating to see, you know, kind of both sides of this coin. Some people see it as this huge expose, and other people see it as kind of a rehash. But I think no matter what, you know, it's definitely sparked conversation. And, you know, if you're interested in checking it out for yourself, all 3 parts are on Tubi.
Yeah, definitely check it out and form your own opinion.
Yeah. And that first one, like I said, is about an hour and 8 minutes. So you can kind of, you know, get a sense of the time commitment there for each one.
Yeah, they're definitely meaty episodes.
Yeah. So let's just kind of recap what we've talked about. You know, part 1, the downfall of Diddy, introduces all those different allegations against him. And they rely a lot on interviews with people who used to be in his inner circle.
Right. And then we move to part 2, the downfall of Diddy, the indictment, which really dives deep into the specifics of those legal charges.
Right, and then we wrap it up with Inside the FREAKOFFS.
Yeah. That one gets into the nitty-gritty of those alleged parties.
Yeah, and they're trying to link those parties to the broader accusations against him.
Right. And we talked about how the public reaction has been all over the place. Some people think it's really revealing, while others think it's just a rehash of old news.
Yeah, exactly. So as you think about all this, I think there's a bigger question here. How do these kinds of documentaries, especially the ones that are produced so quickly, how do they affect how we understand these really complex legal situations?
Right.
Especially when they involve high-profile people like Diddy. I mean, are they shaping public opinion more than they're actually providing new information?
That's a great question. And I think it's one we need to be asking more and more as this type of content becomes so prevalent. Because, these documentaries are super accessible. They're on streaming services. Everyone can watch them.
Right.
So it's like, what are the implications of that? How are they shaping the narrative?
Yeah.
And how does that compare to traditional investigative journalism, which might take months or even years to produce?
Right.
It's a whole new landscape for how we consume and process information.
Yeah, for sure. It's definitely something to think about. So there you have it. Another deep dive complete.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah. We will catch you guys next time.
Having a life scholarship and being able to afford to go to college made me feel inspired to go.
When I got a life scholarship, it was such a relief.
I knew that I wanted to have an impact. Having a life scholarship through the SC Education Lottery was huge. It gave me the opportunity to make that impact right here at home.
The South Carolina Education Lottery. A better you, a better us, a better South Carolina. Visit sceducationlottery.com/betteryou.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.